All right, so I'm gonna give a warm introduction to a fascinating guy, Nate Lawrence. For those of you who don't know who he is, he's a guy that I see as having roots, very strong roots in intuitive living, but I do think he has a very strong academic foundation in the field of just bioenergetics and understanding the fundamental structure of the mechanics of the body and mind and how these things synergistically function. Very sharp guy. And he caught my eye a couple months ago. And I think he's a perfect guest for the show because it's an intersection of a guy like me who's much more anecdotal in my approach because I'm just basically a mad scientist who everything I've discovered about health and life and vitality has just been through rigorous experimentation in the lab. But I think he has more of an academic foundation, and I think that overlay intersects perfectly for an enjoyable discussion. So kick your feet up and sit back because this is basically going to be just like a conversation between me and him as if we're in our living room and you guys are just a fly on the wall. And we're just going to be going through these broad topics. Now, his work is rooted largely, I see him as making addendums to Ray Peat's work. Now, I myself am not too familiar. I have a very rudimentary understanding of Ray Peat and bioenergetics and what that stuff's all about. But as I just said, there's definitely some cross pollination between my ideas and just this overall overarching intersection. So, Nate, if you want to pop in, bro, and just introduce yourself.
Yeah, bro. Appreciate it. We've been trying to do this for a little while, but I think I found you like end of 2022. Saw the Looks Maxers video, and at first I just thought you were another like guru money Twitter type guy. I kind of wrote it off. Then I started seeing some more of your tweets, and I immediately just started seeing that there were parallels there, and I wrote a few threads about that, and after that got on a few spaces, and then just we hopped on a call a little bit ago. I think we ended up talking for like 5 hours, bro. It was crazy. I think it was one of the most profound calls that we hopped on because again, this whole picture is interconnected through this idea of energy, and I'm seeing it really from the lens of Ray's work, and it's again like you just said, the whole intuitive structure of it. It's just unbelievable.
100%. And that conversation that we had was not recorded, but we can just consider it part of the lost tapes.
Yeah.
It's somewhere in the fucking archives, but it's yeah, bro, 100%. And I just want to kind of springboard from there. And I just want to come off the jump and say that, I kind of have an axe to sharpen against some of these techniques, and maybe you can play devil's advocate, but here's what I see. I see a lot of these guys that are basically going all in on health maxing as essentially, I think adult children really gravitate to the idea of having a perfect portrait of health. And the reason I think that is I know a couple guys who have gone super hard into the PD stuff, and these guys are literally consuming mountains of sugar left and right. And they're almost in like a childlike, glazed over Willy Wonka style, like state of wonder and bemusement all the fucking time. And I think what I'm seeing is that people are using food and people are using supplements as a surrogate means of just getting the thrill of living life. And I think a lot of these people that are sitting at home and curating these perfect fucking diets have completely forgotten how to live. But more poignant, I think that they have lost the concept that the greater bio reward feedback system actually comes from achieving what you want in life. And that's more of a metaphysical, broader, unquantifiable concept. But The reality is, from my perspective, is that when you make a kill in life, whether that's a sale, whether that's picking up a girl, whether that's achieving anything that you want, I believe that life is very much largely a process of kill, heal, kill, heal, kill, heal. And I don't really see these guys that are absolutely in this childlike state of wonder that I told you about, because they're basically trying to recreate the euphoria of winning through food. And I think the holy grail is having a combination of both.
100%. Yeah, because there's something interesting. Like people always talk about the idea of like maximizing the metabolism. Of course, this is the big idea, but really the whole point of this is to move life forward. I think the idea of maximizing the youthful state is ultimately much more rational and mature than most people see it as. And it's kind of funny because you can definitely get in this kind of quelled down, not directed forward. But it's the same thing with the bodybuilders. It's the same thing with the ancestral primal crowd. It's almost like I see that as a form of self mutilation. That ancestral primal that we need to return, that we need to go back to this easy youth idea. It's, I think, a way to respond to a stressful environment and lower function. When really I see increasing your energy, increasing your metabolism, really is maximizing your ability to expand life. And really, that's like Ray Peat's thesis. His idea was energy and structure are interdependent at every level. So if you can see the energy flowing through a system, the things that you do in life, the things that you consume, the things that you're striving towards, you can kind of see it like a spiral upwards, almost like the building of a whole symphony. And that's kind of my whole big picture of it, because it's always needs to be directed forward. People kind of get caught in this idea that just having the food, having the dietary framework is the end. But like I see you get it perfectly, where that's just the instrument to you aren't the mission. The mission is the mission, and you use those to sharpen yourself, and it's never the end mean.
Yeah, exactly. I think I've used the analogy in prior spaces that the sharpening the knife is just the means. And a lot of these motherfuckers are just spending their time sharpening the knife, but they never use the knife.
Yeah,
And
exactly.
and I guess my overall point is that when it comes to vitality and it comes kind of fostering this ethic of just good health and healthy living in general, I do think it involves that achievement system. I think 100% reigns supreme in all domains. In other words, a man who's truly pursuing his inner desires, his innermost desires, and actually achieves that, there is a reward system that pays off. It's like a slot machine. It pays greater dividends than any other combination of any kind of health apparatus that you can apply.
Totally,
And
totally.
I think it's not even close. And I think that the guys who essentially are repressing their innermost desires are the guys who get punished the hardest in life. But you're absolutely right with the bodybuilding thing. It's a similar vein, because what it is it's avoidance of risk. There's a lot of safety and comfort in the gym. And so you got motherfuckers who are in there for 4 to 5 hours a day because it's not really a true arena. You can hide in there and you can just be a meathead, and you can take refuge and find safety and comfort and shelter yourself in that kind of bunker. But all you've done is garrison yourself away from life. And I am an advocate for not shielding yourself from the good, the bad, and the ugly. I think that a man specifically is hardwired and designed to deal with the good, the bad, the ugly. And
I
as
I
I,
th- oh yeah,
yeah,
you
go
go.
ahead.
I think that it's like that in itself is actually way more bioenergetic than anything else, because like really maximizing the intensity of life is the point. It's never about longevity. So like people always say, oh, how can you like idolize Ray, or how can like you follow his work when he lived to 86, his teeth fell out. The guy was functioning like he was like 40 years younger at the age of 86, like just way more energy than anyone critiquing him. And I think that's a big point that I was talking about with this bioenergetic research. This guy Georgi Dinkov, he's a absolute genius. He has like I think maybe 2 or 3 jobs. Um, and he has a supplement company and a family. The dude is just doing so much. He's just overflowing with energy, but he's a little bit overweight. It's fucking bald. It's like people always say, okay, well, how does he know so much? If this philosophy really means so much, then why does the dude not look like a Greek god? And he said, he's like, if these people want to keep telling this to me, come into my life, step into my life, and see what it's like, because I guarantee, will not have much to say then. And I think he just gets a great point with that, because the whole thing with him is he's moving life forward. He's researching. The dude just did a study on cancer. He's curing cancer, and people want to talk about, oh, his appearance. It's like I wrote a thread. This is the first thread that I did with you, and I connected it with Georgie. It's like, would you rather look good or get things done? Because it's two things in the modern environment, and it's a really big void that a lot of guys are not even understanding. This whole sharpening thing is not the end.
Nah, it's not the end at all. It kind of goes back to my tweet that I want to draw from yesterday, which is an important one, which is that you there are I have a suspicion in my personal life that I have had drastic injuries and trauma to my body from hardcore living that I have absolutely zero clue has existed. I have a feeling that when I was Olympic lifting very heavy, I can almost guarantee I had some stress fractures in my hands. My feet have been completely fucking abused and annihilated. And because I was living true to my nature and because I was actually pursuing what I wanted in life, I have a feeling that there was like a layer of masking tape over those injuries. And I do think that illnesses, trauma, there are motherfuckers who 100% have cancer right now that have no idea and will probably go on to live 45 to 50 years and have zero fucking clue that there's actually cancer in their body because it's dormant, it's in remission, because they're just living life to the fullest. And I honestly think that asymptomatic life is the way to go. There's zero way to avoid trauma and illness in the body. There's zero
No,
way.
not at all. No,
And I've
and
and I've been asymptomatic, and you also see this at the highest levels of the game. I've seen guys like Allen Iverson in the NBA play through arduous playoff schedules with like broken fingers, broken thumbs. They tape it up and they're still shooting jumpers and still torching opponents. So like there's many examples of guys that are living at their maximum capacity that have severe injuries that they're able to work through just because of the mentality that they have.
100%. Yeah, and I think that's the whole point. Like, really, like Georgie said something like he said, I don't think high metabolism makes you more. I don't think it makes you less resilient. I think it makes it more resilient to the stressors of life. Because really, the whole thing is just having the energy to not put up with bullshit and keep moving. Like that's ultimately the resistance thing. And there's also a thing I think, like Ray said, he's like, when you don't have interest in your health issues anymore, you're probably going in the right direction. And it's like, it's funny because most issues you can just ignore and move through them. Like most of my gut issues that I dealt with, I just had to keep fucking flying through them. But it really got to the point where it's just intuitive. Like my whole picture was follow intuition, and that will get through any setback physically because you know what you're supposed to be doing. You can have a complete conviction when you have an intuitive feeling, and it just takes a few moments. But really, no one can sit with that and say, "What do I need to be doing?" That's kind of when I think you end up with the people who just are eating like ice cream only, getting fat, not doing anything. It's ultimately just running from your intuition. I don't think there's a single way to be actually bioenergetic and end up in a worse state of life. But yeah, I think it always upregulates, to be honest. But
100%. So that circles back to my point. Let's talk about retirement for a second. And kind of to put an accent on what I just said in my prior speech, when people retire or they stop pursuing their dreams as they get older, have you noticed, and I've seen this a lot, all those injuries and all that trauma to the body just magically starts fucking popping up like whack-a-mole. Guys will all of a sudden be arthritic. They're fucking coasting. They're coasting on their laurels. They're retired. They're done. They're not moving. They're not taking on challenges anymore. Then they get slapped with cancer. Then all the symptoms start to rear their ugly head.
yeah,
I've seen this over and over again.
It's like what's the quote? I think it's to retire is to expire. Like I really do see that as the main focus is like keeping the apparatus moving at all costs. Like when you run out of energy, when things become static, this is where all the problems evolve. Like you can literally see this at the most basic level. This is the like propagation of um, evil, you could say in a sense, but really I think an accumulation of stress is what it is, because we can all have stress. Nothing's going to change how much stress we have, but our ability to move through it and metabolize it essentially was my focus. And Ray has this idea of like anti-stress living or anti-stress substances, and I think that's like the thing. It goes back to like you mentioned before, how like all the force production in life comes when you're in a catabolic state, and that you essentially will go nowhere if you're not willing to deteriorate yourself. And I completely agree with that. But something I found extremely profound from bioenergetics is that it kind of brings the understanding of how to protect yourself in that process. And the ultimate idea is just keeping up the metabolic rate to oppose stress. You know, like I said, nothing can really change how much we deal with, but just how we respond to that. And you notice that many of the greats of history just intuitively understand this, like caffeine, nicotine, sugar, milk, aspirin. Like they just all happen to be used by all of the innovators throughout time. And I know we kind of talked about a little bit with like diet and like how you said you had a experience with aspirin. That to me was just so profound.
100%. Let's talk about cigarettes for a second. Um, I view cigarettes as a food. I don't think people genuinely really understand that, cigarettes is really no different than a food. So I view cigarettes as sort of like an external organ. You could almost see it as an external thyroid in the palm of your hand. And a guy like me who does, I do live at the edge. I objectively have a very stressful lifestyle that I've chosen. The cigarette to me is no different than salt. You know what I'm saying? It's like a synthesized mineral vitamin in the palm of your hand, and the consumption of it 100%, because I am personally, I don't eat sugar. I'm on high animal fat. I've been doing this shit for 20 years. Everyone told me I was going to crash and burn and blow my fuses and have malfunctions. Hasn't occurred yet. But I do have a feeling that the cigarette is sort of like a surrogate form of sugar to a degree. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I 100% see what you mean, because I think just when did you start smoking cigarettes? If like I don't really know that.
Probably 15 years ago.
Damn, yeah. I really see it as just a way to lower stress, and just it is legitimately pro metabolic. You know, nicotine, good substance for increasing energy, but it's like the thing that people kind of forget with a lot of these things is that there can be slightly detrimental things physiologically that end up just moving you forward, and I think that's what you lean into. Like it's the thing in the health crowd that kind of splits the primal ancestral crowd and the peak crowd. The peak crowd is kind of fine just experimenting and moving with anything. And I think that's why a lot of people are like, oh, look at these motherfuckers just eating sugar and just having milk. Like, I don't know how this is going to be good for, like, it's ultimately justified from like a person who came from health as like a like you said, kind of like that baby mentality of just like having drinking food, but really like to me, it's just a useful tool for accelerating life. Like I really see it in that lens, but it's kind of hard to get someone into that philosophy if they really don't have any reason to be there. Like I think a lot of guys will never really understand the bioenergetic framework, and it's not really even something you can teach someone. It's something that you just fall into. Like I think that's one of the last rites of passage, the one of health of coming to these ideas, because like you'll see guys like Paul Saladino, like he started as a carnivore and he 100% had issues from that. He talked about he had like electrolyte issues or other things like that, and then he started bringing in carbs. And the one thing with meat and carbs together is you're getting a excess of iron from combining them, because both of those synergize, and you can have iron toxicity from that. So it's like these things always need the context, and that's what Ray always looked at. So that's why he saw calcium in milk as a way to inhibit iron absorption. So if you're having like fruit with meat, consuming it with calcium, or consuming it with coffee, consuming it with these different things that can inhibit negative properties of it, and also gelatin. Like we used to eat nose to tail, and we would be getting like around half of that protein coming from gelatin instead of just muscle meat. So it's like these kind of things Ray put together throughout his work, and it's just a really powerful thing because I think I see it more in line with the ancestral thinking. I see it as like kind of a movement towards more life, and the primal idea I think is useful, but really it's turning back to lower function. When I really think ordering and becoming higher in your energy and structure is the ultimate idea. That's I think the big focus that you have too with just evolving life and getting to the extent where you're exceeding your potential that was on paper.
Yeah, 100%. Let's talk about the adage, the sort of this old wives' tale wisdom about this concept that stress kills, because I see it as the opposite. I see that the people who have an easy, comfy life, especially in the later years, I see atrophy and I see immense bodily and spiritual deterioration. And I think that the ones who are commanding their stress and wielding the stress and choosing the stress are the ones who outlive everybody. So I see being in charge of your stress and taking on the challenge and taking stewardship over that. I see that as sort of the bulwark against aging.
Completely. I think that's the whole picture ultimately, because like aging, I think is just the loss of function, for a calcification almost. Like I think aging is like a general slow process of calcification where you're losing function because the environment around you got too stressful, for you to keep moving, and ultimately keeping the metabolic rate up, keeping energy up is always the thing, and stimulating work and just having a mission, and these things, like having caffeine, having cigarettes, all of these things support that apparatus. It's pro metabolic ultimately, I see.
100%. So what do you think the panacea for stress is? Like, how do you see that picture
I I think that
besides
there's
food consumption?
Yeah, there's this stress researcher named Hans Selye. He was like in the early 1900s. Ray Peat talked a lot about him. He had this idea about stress called general adaptation syndrome. So essentially, it's when you receive, it's like an alarm, and then you go into resistance when your resources are maxed out, and really when you're in that state of resistance, you're always going to end up running out eventually if you don't have something to protect you or keep you moving forward. So it's like I think almost not perceiving something as a problem. Like I think you said this because I heard you talking about stress, is that stress is more like the problems perceived, not necessarily the problems you're dealing with. So like it's always the people who are static and just kind of sitting back without the energy that think that going into a stressful place is going to destroy them. Rather, you actually upregulate every time you jump into that. And you're the perfect example of that. Just going through that fatigued state, you're always going to upregulate when you have the mission. But there is 100% when you're not being directed towards something, you will 100% run out. So it's always important, in my opinion, to just understand this idea of intuition where you're being guided by higher forces. I essentially see that as our connection to the divine. And really, if you really think about it, intuition is what moves life forward. Any reasoning in life always comes downstream of intuition. All of the generators, all the thinkers, all the innovators, all of them are driven by intuition and things that were not true at one point. There's always something in generation that just overcomes anything in the environment, I think.
Yeah, 100%. And those with those avant-garde ideas are considered the heretics of our time. And I think I've remarked on this in the past. I said that heretics always get vindicated in the end.
Yeah,
It might be 10 years down the line, but like a lot of the ideas that I'm even whipping up and spinning are 100% going to be fucking time tested a decade from now. And,
100%.
and I'm aware of that. It seems like heresy now, but give it a fucking decade and these are going to be stone cold truths.
Well, like you look at like I brought up William Blake before. William Blake, he and Nietzsche too. Actually, I think they're kind of in a similar vein. They both were only successful really after their time, And it's funny because it's kind of the similar thing with Ray Peat. After he passed, that's really when he started becoming something with his philosophy. And he always like, there's something about it where you exist outside of time, or you exist further down the line when you're really innovating something. And it's often that you're not going to have any people understand it in your lifetime. I think like I really see it though culminating in this idea of like process philosophy. I think I might have brought that up to you, but process philosophy, it's really just the flow of energy philosophy. You know, that idea that like life is in constant change and the divine essentially emanates through all things. And I think it starts kind of roughly with Heraclitus, the philosopher. You know, no man steps in the same river twice. And it's like that kind of comes in with William Blake's work. I think he really illuminated that, this focus on like a creative, generative human spirit, that like God works through biological energy. And I think like people like Ray give a background to that picture. But it's also really profound because you see it in Eastern philosophy as well, like Taoism. Like you see it kind of expressed in that light. But ultimately, like bioenergetics kind of bridges the gap between like a Christian ethic. Like William Blake was a Christian, but he kind of flew in the face of a lot of Christian practices, and he saw the imagination as the divine. And like that to me is this idea that time is not really something that means anything for innovation. Like innovation exists outside of time. So that's really why I think things that are being expressed in our lifetime are really kind of further down the line and coming from the past. You know, it's really, you plant a seed with a really good idea. That's I think ultimately the best ideas are planted and they take a while to propagate.
Yeah, I can rock with that. I think my standpoint on this is that I think the pipeline to God actually stems from the gut. So I think the plumbing system starts from actually the actual gut itself. And I think that when people have eldritch or otherworldly perceptions, like any kind of perfunctory perception of the world, things that seem metaphysical, experiences that seem spiritual or outer body, are all emanating from the intuition in the gut. And it's very easy in my eyes to mistake that as something divine, but I would say it's the closest thing to divinity. In other words, it's there has to be and here's the interesting paradox to this. The guys that I see with the best intuition in general seem to have massive ruptures and problems with their gut health in the first place. Like it's never an immaculate perfect vacuum.
No, not at all. And that's the crazy thing too. Like you look throughout history at all people who are just really innovators, and Ray,
Wrecked.
William Blake, all of these guys just having issues with their gut. And that's I think the thing to connect them to the source. Like greatness emerges out of sickness. I really see it like that. And like I think Nietzsche talked about that, but really it's profound because it's called a gut feeling for a reason, you know. And I think you can only get in contact with that from being afflicted with that sort of sickness to it, you know.
Exactly, because then it creates the overcompensatory landscape in order to push back. And so it's like without that deficit, without that burden, there's really no motivation or reason to strive. You know what I'm saying? Like one of my central tenets has always been, as a man, you don't want to heal to 100% health. You don't want to fucking heal from all your trauma and all your pain that you've gone through in your life. You don't want to do enough self-help work to where you are a fully to where you've basically ratified that, because what happens is you then take away your drive and motivation to make anything of this world. You know what I mean? And one of the metaphors that I used is I said that a man, and I use heartbreak in a much more broad scope. When I talk about heartbreak, I'm not even talking about heartbreak from a woman. I'm talking about there are plenty of men who have pursued a dream, a catastrophic fucking towering fucking dream in life, and they have not made it. They failed. And maybe that broke their heart. And the fact that you can walk around with that wound makes you a much more powerful creature. But if you took away the wound and you healed it completely, you now don't have that negative force of energy to push off from.
100%. 100%. I think like God or divinity is really the idea that like there are these mechanisms of decay and decline that have been placed in to kind of return someone towards this higher level of energy, this higher divinity. You know, I ultimately see it in that lens. I think there's a lot of it that's unnatural, 100%. The environment's deteriorating completely, but really, that is the return to this higher God. You know, that I really see it in that.
100%. Now, let's change tunes for a second. I am of the belief that the human body is perfectly suited for the modern environment. I truly believe that. Now, I understand that there's fucking xenoestrogens, whatever the fuck you want to call this shit, BPAs, microplastics. I think the body is 100% suited to tolerate this type of shit. You know what I mean? I'm a polyester wearing motherfucker. I wear fucking workout tights. Like I don't trip about any of this stuff. And I also think that the worldview in general that humans have the industrial might to poison the earth is insane. I see absurdity in that. I genuinely do not think that any of this fucking climate change bullshit and all these narratives about how we've destroyed the planet. I think the planet is way too powerful and regenerative in general.
100%. Yeah, yeah. I think like there's this guy that Ray talked about, Vernadsky, and he saw this picture of life where Earth is really trying to reach towards a new homeostasis, and it's very imbalanced. Like that's the thing that you see is that stimulating the flow of energy requires that you have a preference towards one side than the other, and that's kind of what creates this spiral. But really the idea in that is that life is going to liberate itself eventually. Like the earth is heating up, creating more carbon dioxide. You can literally see that as the earth increasing its metabolic rate and increasing its energy. And it's kind of crazy because a lot of this idea that, oh, we're running out of resources, I don't know. I don't know if any of that is true. You know, it's crazy though, because goes against really this view of life where I think the modern environment artificially imposes a static view of reality, and a
Bro,
lot of
exactly.
these things that people think are permanent really are just outran by life itself. The flow of energy will liberate all things, and whatever that looks like is yet to be understood and never will be actually. But that's I think that the idea to lion is the flow of energy.
100%. So like I have a Gaian model of the universe where I think that it's more apropos to Gaia, which is the goddess of Mother Nature. I see the earth as a creature, as a living, breathing organism that evolves, it changes its strategy, it's renewable. I don't see the earth as this mechanistic grandfather clock that everybody thinks it is. Everyone thinks that the earth is like some fucking mechanistic machine that essentially only has enough ticks in the clock before it all kind of breaks down. I don't view it that way. And so what I'm saying is I think obviously there's synchronicity between humans and all life forms in general with the earth itself. And so the idea that a human species can fucking destroy the oceans like the narrative has been since we were in fucking fifth grade. They said that we've completely poisoned the earth. That to me just sounds like absolute fucking nonsense.
Yeah. Yeah, totally. I mean, it's really taking this view that life itself is harmful to life. Like Ray really focused on this because a lot of what like I've had an interest in is this idea that life is really supposed to be effortless. And there's this quote that I always go back to: the fox provides for himself, but God provides for the lion. And I really think that's giving into the unconscious energy flow of life. And you can see that expressed in almost every single living and non-living thing. Like that's what I think William Blake was talking about when he said, "How do we know that every bird that like cuts the air isn't an intense world of delight or something like that?" And it's funny because it's really this idea that like or he said also he was like if the doors of perception were cleansed, man would see what he was, infinite. And that's like I think the whole picture that gets misconstrued now is that life itself is harmful to life, and that live and death is what actually brings life, or lowering energy is what brings life. Like this is the whole paradigm with like the middle. You know, it's dulling everything down. There's no intensity, there's no polarity, because this polarity or this contrast is really the thing to stimulate energy. And you dull all of that down when you bring everything into the middle. And that's why I saw your video, like the first one that you did, like the mission is all that you have. That's why I saw that being just so fucking profound, because it brought together what I was seeing before that, and you putting it into the middle was just, yeah, that to me was something that really oriented a lot.
Yeah, 100%. This idea that modern psychiatry, modern medical systems, they basically want to corral everybody in the middle and squash outliers through medication and big pharma and shit. They want to basically take any fucking stroke of genius and kind of lasso it back in to the middle and say, no, 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 buddy, you can't have these fucking outrageous ideas. No, 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 you can't live life slightly fucking crazed. You know what I'm saying? And like the whole concept that I rock with big time is that all the geniuses, all the innovators, all the guys that are the best at their craft they are missing some screws upstairs. And that's sort of where I just get the whole foundation of my whole philosophy is you you can be crazy in this life as long as you're aware of the craziness, as long as you've chosen it. In other words, there are people out there who are definitionally crazy, but the point of the matter is they're completely still aware of the social dynamics, the power dynamics. They're aware of everything going on. And so it's all about the awareness. You know what
100.
I mean? And it's like the guys who are truly crazy, textbook wise, they're completely unaware that they've gone mad. You know what I mean? The guy, the fucking bum at the bus stop who's talking to himself, who's schizophrenic, that guy's gone. He ain't coming back because he has no idea his condition. But if you intentionally draw the rubber band, like the elasticity of the brain, and you push it to the outer boundaries, there 100% is a lot to be gleaned and gained in those states. But it's all about the elasticity. For example, I can sustain long periods of stress and fatigue without my brain breaking. You know what I mean? I can gamble millions of dollars and deal with that. And 100% when I'm in that state, I'm in that kind of berserker crazed state, I will rebound back to baseline pretty quickly
Totally. Well,
because I'm choosing the stress.
yeah. You know what? I was thinking, like, there's something in that of pulling back the resistance or pulling back the band. I really think it goes back to like working in ebbs and flows and run and gun, which is completely your style. And I think it's because it minimizes an event to such a small window that the intensity is so magnified, and it's ultimately anti-middle. Because you see this like slow delayed release versus these jumps and falls. That is what really gets you up the ladder. And it's it's like this whole thing is missed, that you can rationally be absurd. Like that's I think, like, there's a real coherence to a lot of this. Like I think that something is interesting, because like you talked about earlier, just kind of this idea of guys kind of leaning into this idea of energy as like a kind of cop out to follow like a youthful spirit. I tend to think that maximizing the youthful state is the entire idea of what you talk about. And the reason is because it goes back to energy flow. The high energy flow is the youthful spirit, the creative generative spirit. They're ultimately more intelligent, more rational than the fucking mature guy. The mature guy is completely static, completely calcified in his mind, stuck in his ways. And I think
Exactly.
there's not anything admirable about that. There's this whole talk of like,
So
yeah,
that
you can go.
let me interrupt you. That's a great point. There's a lot of renditions in history. A lot of philosophers have sort of used colorful metaphors to explain this. I actually think there's a quote from Heraclitus that said that the universe is a child at play with colored balls.
Hmm.
And there is a lot of childish metaphor that have been brought to the table to sort of explain a lot of these dynamics. I agree with you. But it's interesting to me because I think the whole idea of adulting, being an adult, is very much a social construct. And the ones who partake in it the most, the ones who are obsessed with maturation and being a quote unquote adult, I find that they have the most stultified energy. Have you noticed this? Like, have you noticed that what basically the school system does is it grooms you to be an adult, the archetypal adult?
Completely.
And the social construct of an adult is very fascinating to me because objectively, what I've seen, the guys who make the most gains and reap the most rewards in life are generally pretty irresponsible. And
Totally.
I think responsibility, like in the classic sense of being an adult where everyone thinks that as long as I have all my bills paid and as long as I'm fucking up to date on everything that I'm an adult and I'm responsible. I don't see it in that lens whatsoever. Do
No.
you?
Not at all. Well, here's the thing. I think it's like we talk about aging. I really see aging as this cutting off of energy flow at the expense of function. So like these dull routines and this slow pay schedule, these cliche wordings, like that is all from a static flow of energy. Or there's essentially like serotonin is some a hormone that you can look at. People call it the happy hormone. Serotonin can really be seen as the hibernation hormone in the metabolic view. It lowers energy and promotes this kind of repetitive thing, and it's ultimately all leads back to this thing I mentioned, like the calcification. That really is death. Is when your when your energy flow is cut off because the environment is too stressful. That's really, I think, where you see the maturity and the adulting coming about. Like William Blake said something about like avoiding dull minds, and I really think he was talking about serotonin, and just this construct that any cliches, any repetitive nature is ultimately probably degenerating structurally for the organism, and you can kind of see it in nature too. Like it's cancer metabolism is ultimately this primitive form of metabolism where you're using glucose and wasting it away into lactic acid instead of going through these more complex apparatuses to generate more carbon dioxide and more ATP. Like carbon dioxide is one of the things you can look at as like a flow promoter. And ultimately, I do think it all goes back to the metabolism of energy, the oxidation of energy. Um, but yeah, it's like all of the stressful things in life kind of promote this primitive form of metabolism that lowers energy flow, that essentially takes away and de-evolves higher function. Like you can see it with digestion, probably the number one. And look at the issues that we're facing today. Look at all the issues that people are dealing with. Everybody has low level gut issues and does not even know that they are deteriorating structurally. People who dealt with issues in the past used to be elderly, bro. And these issues are seen younger and younger. All of the mental faculties are gone. So many Zoomers, bro, that just cannot function. I really do think it comes back to this idea that just there's not enough energy, not enough stimulation. This whole thing that like kids are overstimulated is 100% true, but it's really stimulation from the wrong things that are exciting
Mm-hmm.
and not providing resources back. Social media, I actually
Exactly.
think that spending more time on social media is probably good for young people when they have proper nutrition and other stimulation in life. Like I spend probably I can't even tell you how much I spend on my phone, but it's just increased and my health has gotten better. But that's only because I have this understanding that supplying reserves is what allows the mental state to be in a good place to really assimilate everything that you're experiencing. That's the whole picture that's missed. And I don't even know if there's a way to bring it to light. And I think it's probably always going to remain obscure. But I think it's gonna really guide life. And it's really crazy to think about.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up. So when I came out with this idea of leaning into your nature and leaning into your edge, I had some morons try to get cute with the concept, and someone in jest made a comment, some kind of reproach where they were like, "Oh, does that mean?" Because I was basically saying, look, if you can't stop smoking, one of the strategies to quit is to overdo it and take it to the end ranges where you're
Yeah.
just hardcore Gatling gunning cigs to the point where you are absolutely sickened and disgusted by it. And by proxy, you'll have a desire to stop. That is actually a true way to do it. Like if there is something that you can't stop, if you do it enough and you overload it so crazily, you will be mortified and there will be a period of time where you'll just have absentia from it. So someone was like, "Oh, so are you saying that if I have a porn addiction, I should just keep shucking my corn all day? Like, should I just keep fucking stroking myself all fucking day and watching porn?" And it dawned on me when the idiot made that comment. I was like, this guy's a fucking retard, because here's the point. It goes back to what you just said. There's zero upside to watching porn. There's no reward. There actually is not really a fucking reward. The cigarette smoking, though, is an entirely different fucking ballgame. We just discussed that SIGs can lead to innovation and extra creativity and shit like that. It's all about what you're fucking choosing. There's zero fucking upside to porn. None. In fact, I would argue the opposite. The chimpanzee brain gets fooled and tricked into believing that you are at the bottom of the troop, right? Because we know as primates, especially chimps, humans, we all live in sort of a social hierarchy. And when you watch porn, what you're essentially telling the chimpanzee brain in your subconscious is that you are so undesirable, that you are at the bottom of the totem pole and you are invisible and you are unwanted and you are a rejected specimen. And that has biological consequences. I don't give a fuck what anybody says. That type of unconscious imagery and messaging is extremely fucking destructive to the biome.
Exactly. Yeah, and here's the thing that is super interesting to me is that I've noticed like any addiction is therapeutic to a degree. So the way that I see it, addiction is in like this bioenergetic view. Danny, Roddy, and Ray, Pete, and Georgie Dinkov, they've talked about this. Is like there's a real biological craving for something that you're addicted to, whether that's smoking, whether it's porn, whatever it is, you're getting something from that. But it's to the point where it's not actually supporting your energy and function. It's like the modern environment puts in all of these things that are going to play to your senses that actually deplete energy rather than generate energy. And that's, I think, the whole thing of the reversal of nature that people talk about or whatever. Like you brought up like the polyester and xenoestrogens. I think like only when you're resistant is that something, or only when you're resilient is that something that a person can kind of not give a fuck about, because really like in a low energy state people don't even realize how much they're deteriorating just by eating like a few meals of McDonald's, bro. Like it's just that to me is the thing. Like you shouldn't be like our default food or our default craving should always be one of a generation of health, and that I think is something completely missed. Like when you have this bioenergetic understanding, you can follow every single craving, and you actually should not. You should not reject a single craving because there's a real biological mechanism for that, and that there's something in your organism telling you that it's going to lead you towards higher structure, but it's important to recognize which ones are pro-metabolic versus anti-metabolic. Like really, that's what it gets down to.
100%. 100%. I love gambling. I love it. And I don't think most people will ever go through life understanding that kind of relationship with a craft or an art. I The kind of love that I have for what I do is absolutely fucking otherworldly. And when you love something so much, it's extremely fucking painful. It's extremely fucking painful because loving anything in general, whether it's a human, your craft, anything that you fall in love with, has a feeling that you're out of control, And I think that's why people struggle to bond with other people, have a struggle to sort of stay committed to a path, is because they're afraid that the love is essentially going to overpower and overtake them, which is why it's 100 times easier to internalize a miserable state. Because when you're miserable and depressed, you have a false sense of control over your life because you're the one directing and enacting the misery. Staying in misery gives people a lot of feeling of control and power over their situation, when in fact it's the complete opposite.
Completely. It's like that's actually more static. That's actually an accumulation of stress when really like
Bingo.
there's not much that you should internalize. That kind of gets back to the flow idea, where the things that you do in life, there's something really interesting to me that I didn't really understand at first. I think Ray said something like, somebody asked him, "Is there any cause that you would die, or is there anything that you would die for?" And he was like, no, I don't think so." And that kind of like took me back, because I'm like, this guy's committed to life, he's committed to health, and it took me a while, because I'm totally of the opinion that you should have things that you should die for. You should die for your mission, but ultimately, what I realized is he wasn't talking about he wouldn't die for any cause. What he's talking about is he's not going to become static anywhere. He's ultimately dying for life. That's ultimately, I think, his whole purpose. Like, but people get caught in this idea that you need to have a place to rest on. Ultimately, nothing can be rested on. It's that warrior
Bro,
spirit that just
exactly.
doesn't exist anymore.
Bro, exactly. There's no perch. There's no perch. There's no throne. And what I want to say is, I want to give kind of an anecdote, a personal example from my life that illustrates what I'm talking about perfectly in this idea. Because I've said before that I've been sort of disenchanted with the idea of linear gains, right? I've mocked it. I've derided it publicly because I said success is not linear. And what I mean by that is, like, to illustrate the zigzag pattern of success, let me give you a completely off the wall example of what I mean. In my business, in the way I roll, realistically, because I'm such a reckless, high wire walking motherfucker, I, in order for me to net $5 million, I got to make 20. Okay? Wrap your head around this for a second. In order for me to seriously net 5 million, I have to generate 20 million. And the reason is because I don't stop and I don't quit and I'm always pushing the challenge, I pretty much know who I am. And I know that if I come into 20 mil, I'm probably going to burn 15 of it trying to get to 100. And so someone would look at that and they'd be like, why don't you just make 20 mil and stop? And what they fail to understand is that the only reason why I'm the type of guy who can get to 20 million in the first place is because of that aggressive approach. So it all goes back to that aggression. I have to overshoot and overpower my goals in life by several miles, by many, many kilometers over the target just to land where I want to be. Because there's going to be a massive amount of runoff. Because I know when I get 20, I'm going to shoot for 100.
It's crazy that you
And
say
so
that,
that's
'cause
perfect. That's a perfect
yeah,
example of the ebb and flow and vitality of life, because rationally, it don't make no sense, right? Rationally, you're looking at that and you're like, that doesn't make any sense. But it makes perfect sense if you're talking about bioenergetics and flow of energy and zigzagging and anti-linear success.
yep, yep. Well, that's the thing, because it always orients you forward. It requires that you need to keep moving, whether you want to or not. Because I see you just subconsciously install these sort of mechanisms, like your thing of taking on as much responsibility as possible. I totally see that as the thing to just keep movement, as the orienting picture. And like like I think I brought this up with you before, but it's like improvement makes straight roads, but the crooked roads without improvement are the roads of genius. But that's the thing that people completely miss, is like the optimization is the straight road. That's the one where you're rising really slowly, and ultimately you're not even producing enough energy to get anything special from that. That is, I think, ultimately the cancer metabolism. You're just going on a straight path to nothingness, pretty much.
100%. 100%. When I was a lot more wily and rascally in my 20s, I would say pretty much the entire decade of my 20s, I had like a 98 or 99% leak in income. Not joke. That's how reckless I was. In other words, I had to generate, no joke, if I generated $1 million for me to net fucking 10K, I would have to fucking continually generate $1 million. Just because my runoff and my burn rate and my spillage was so fucking high. But what people don't understand, that level of striving and having the capacity and firepower to even hit that target in the first place is what was driving me forward. It was a forward looking kind of pyramid tipped approach to life. And you want to talk about walking away from the past and not looking back at yesterday. There's no better way to do that than oversetting your mark by several kilometers, like I just said.
Completely, completely. You know, I actually wanted to ask you, like, what made you first get the Mohawk? Like, when did you like decide on that?
Bro, it was an accident. It was an accident. My girl, I had some clippers, and I used to shave my head, and I had some clippers, and I accidentally used one of those guards on the clippers, and I fucked up like a huge side of the shave, and it kind of looked like a quasi mohawk. And I was like, fuck it, this shit's gonna grow back. Let's just fucking rock with it. And so she ended up just kind of fucking tapering it and fucking and tempering it and making it look like a full mohawk because I fucked up the cut. And then I just ended up sticking with it.
Yeah, did you have you thought about it ever? Because to me, like that's like literally the ultimate expression of your of your life. It's just this orienting forward, the kind of warrior spirit, the spear. Like it really is a spear.
Yeah, it's like a fucking shark fin, man. It's
Yeah,
like
bro.
fucking coyote headed motherfucker. It's true. It's fucking true. And so I just kind of rocked with it, and it's always just felt fucking natural as fuck to me. And yeah, bro, it all started as a mistake. That's the fucking hilarious thing about life is like anything that's happened to me that I've ended up sticking with was an accident. And I've always learned how to take accidents and mistakes and weave them into the overall structure and make it work. And I think that's a huge part of being a man is learning how to incorporate mistakes and using those as leverage.
Completely, completely. Like I, for when I first saw that idea with you, I really saw it in the same lens as like what Georgie does is essentially just keep it moving. You know, it's like I think like I think I've said this before. It's like you can fall upwards. That's ultimately what I see it as with you. It's just the integrating and weaving is the thing that kind of outruns you because you build that structure that what do you call it survives after you. I was curious. Like I think that routine of a certain kind can be extremely beneficial, but in a certain way, it can actually completely destroy someone. I think. Do you think routine is something that a person should focus on?
Yeah, as a foundation for sure. I mean, that's the funny thing about my work is I've built a very large sanctuary around the concept of routine. I mean, I have my circuit that I run. You know what I'm saying? Like I know no matter what happens to me, I'm always going to be eating good and I'm always going to be fucking hitting the gym and getting stronger. And
Yeah,
that's sort of my monastery. That's where I recharge, that's where I rebuild. If anything goes wrong, I always have that routine to fall back on. But having that foundation allows me a lot more leeway to live extreme on the periphery.
totally, totally, bro. I saw this like I brought up David Lynch to you. He has this sort of mindset on creativity where his day is so structured. He eats the exact same meal, exact same time. He counts the cigarettes that he smokes, and he has this really structured thing, but his work is extremely obscure and avant-garde, and it's like he described it as it's kind of making the structure to the point where the mental energy can go where it needs to go, and I totally see that. And it's like Rick Rubin talks about a similar idea, and to me it's like it's funny because you look at this idea that Ray has of energy and structure, and you can see it really as just maximizing your physical structure, either routine, either health, is all just giving you something to lie on to let the brain and consciousness and whatever it is to really go towards the feet, you know.
100%. I eat the same fucking boring meal every day for like 15, 20 years now. There's zero variance, zero deviance. Everyone's always asked me, they're like, how are you not bored just eating a fucking plate of meat and eggs for every fucking meal? And I was like, because I don't view food as an orgasmic experience. To me, it's just rocket fuel. It's always been that way. I eat, I eat to live. Most people live to eat. You know what I'm
Yeah,
saying? Like I eat for the fucking, so I can retaliate against life. So I can take that life force and retaliate. And it's funny to me because people were always like, bro, you scarf your food down in like 2 minutes. You're like, don't you ever enjoy a meal? And I'm like, not really. Like, show me anywhere in the wild, show me one example in the wild where a predator animal goes slow and fucking chews their food and really fucking savors it. Show me where that's a factual thing. You know what I'm saying? Like you put some fucking chicken hearts in a fucking dog bowl. You watch a Rottweiler go to town. You watch a Rottweiler go to town. It's like for me, I'm scarfing my food in 2 minutes. I basically don't even chew my food. I inhale it, and it's gone, and I move on to the next fucking thing.
Yeah, bro. I actually remember because we were talking about that, the kind of like prey eating versus predator eating, and I genuinely think I see what you're saying 100% about this idea that people lie on it, but I think it integrates with the predator style a lot more than you think. Because again, like the people who understand how to use it, people who are really innovators throughout history are understanding that they just need some form of nutrients supplied to fuel their mental processes, to fuel their physical like Nikola Tesla, he had, I think, like a diet of milk, beef, and fruit. He made like a blend of that, and he just drank it like in the lab throughout the day. And to me, it's like all these guys are like just drinking coffee constantly, or having milk and coffee, and just this whole picture I think is kind of connected. But I think because bro, I really just want you to give up this idea that like you need to have this primal mindset. I mean, of course I see it, but like I think it's a lot more integrated towards the evolution of or the
Yeah,
evolutionary mindset. I don't know, you
yeah.
know what I'm trying to
Well,
say.
can you enhance that idea for me? Because the lens that I see it through is that all animals, all prey animals, graze throughout the day
Yeah, completely. Well, here's the
unanimously.
thing. If we look at life as we want to maximize the intensity of existence, we want to really just expand our function. I think the way to do that is to constantly increase speed, constantly increase the rate of living. And I think that's kind of the thing of supplying meals. Your energy is being expended so fast that you need to keep supplying. You can't just persist off of just like a carb, or I mean, what do you call it? Like starch and low micronutrient. Like if you ultimately look at this metabolic picture, it's actually more expensive to eat. I mean, by expensive, I mean expensive energetically. You eat food and it makes you hungrier. It's ultimately like I had a homie who wrote a article about this. It's like an aristocratic way of eating, that it makes you hungrier and you need to keep eating. It's like that to me is really the big picture. Like I think we look at like the prey mentality. It's ultimately more toned down, eating plants, and of course like fruit. It's about the availability, and we can talk about that idea, of course. But like I don't think in the lens of energy and evolution, any of the availability ideas really mean as much, to be honest. I really
So
see it's like your mental function and physical function is ultimately guiding the ship. But
so what do you think the X factor is? How do you think I've gone this long? We're talking nearly two full decades of basically in a keto state.
yeah.
Because I don't do sugar. Everyone told me I was going to crash and burn. What do you think is the X factor in that equation? How do you think I've lasted this long on just the high animal fat, intermittent fasting? Because I usually eat just two very large meals a day.
Yeah, yeah. Well, we talked about like I think we touched on like your blood or your genetics, and that's like a big thing that people who like follow the bioenergetic ideas are kind of weary of, which is like the genetic view of life.
Because it's too mystical.
Well, yeah, and it gives like impression that everything in life is random and you have no control over it. When that's almost completely antithetical to this whole bioenergetic idea that like life is striving towards higher order. That's ultimately the whole point. Is just striving towards structure, energy, and order. And
Well,
speed.
so like you know how we talk about metaphors are 100% like implicit forms of reality.
Yeah, yeah,
In other words, they describe reality better than reality itself. I've always enjoyed, it's been endearing to me to kind of flirt with the concept of hunger. I like being in a hungry state. And I'm talking financially, I'm talking from spiritually. Like I enjoy that feeling of deprivation and going after it when the fucking saliva glands are fucking pouring from the roof of your mouth. Like I enjoy the intensity of feeling that fucking hunger and drive. There's something primal in that kind of primordial soup that is extremely fucking empowering to me.
completely. But I think you can actually innovate. I think that like we talk about the catabolic state. I think like we say that that's where all expression is. Bioenergetics to me is the way to protect under that condition, because I always think that it's important to recognize what is going to actually move you forward, what deterioration is going to move you forward, or what deterioration is going to leave you debilitated. That's, I think, the big picture. Because, like, I think a person like you just have an intuitive understanding of, like, you know that you're going to be able to fucking sort it out. You know you're going to be able to get back on your routine. You know, if everything goes wrong, you're always going to have something to lie back on. And a lot of people do not understand this. And I think that's the big picture. I think it's just a thing that's within you innately, and ultimately it's like the innovator versus the I wouldn't even say consumer, but like it's really this view towards life, and this view, like the prolific and devourer is how William Blake described it. You know, I wrote that thread connecting with you. It's like the creator always sees the frontier as the point to head, and the devourer, they always follow the innovator, the creator. And to me, it's an absolutely necessary process. Like you've talked about it with like the idea where you're working on a project, and there's always somebody at the front lines who is having people work for them, work with them, and they're all being brought forward. But someone always needs to be, taking the shots and really deteriorating. And so like Ray Pete, I see like people say, oh, he lost his teeth or whatnot or stuff like that. It's like, well, he was experimenting. He was actually moving things forward, and that to me is very, very bioenergetic.
100%. So like I view myself as sort of like a Kevlar vest.
Yeah, yeah.
I am very much a bulletproof vest in my line of work. I absorb a lot of fucking damage, and I incur a lot of fucking stress and trauma on my body. But what I wanted to ask you is, do you see some element of nourishment through achievement?
100%. I see like the mission is ultimately, like we talk about, like, oh, it's a macronutrient. In many ways it legitimately gets you there. It's like that to me is, I think, the most important picture. Like it doesn't really matter necessarily what you're doing in life or what you're consuming, as long as it's moving life forward. It's like that's the thing of just, I think, not being static and needing your routine or needing what you do in life, needing anything to be a certain way, because needing anything to be a certain way is just static, and that's not movement. So that to me is the big
Ex- exactly. Like I love to play games with myself to test myself, to test my fortitude. I love to throw wrenches in the machine and see what I'm capable
thing.
of. I like to throw variables, and I like to call audibles. Like for example, there's times where I'll fast for 40 hours and I'll go try to fucking lift my maximal weight. Now, I've seen zero decrease in performance. Zero. Literally zero playing those types of games. Like I've never walked into a gym and had it in the back of my head, fuck, I didn't get 8 hours of sleep. Fuck, I'm malnourished. There's no way I can lift this weight. I've always been able to pick up the same weight, no matter how stressed, fatigued, how fucked up I've been. I've always been able to go in and perform at my best. Always. And so I think it's fair to say that mentality and some of these pataphysical qualities are a lot more important components of the equation. But again, they're they sort of get scoured from the sort of academic portfolio because they're deemed as too mystical,
Completely.
right? They're deemed as too mystical. There's no way to really quantify what the fuck is going on there. How does a motherfucker who hasn't drinking water in 24 hours and is objectively dehydrated still lifting maximal weight and still just as strong as he was when he was hydrated?
No, there's nothing on paper that can prove that. And like you
It can
look at
prove
like the
that.
people who live to like 100, 120, and we all know that they're always fucking smoking, they're always fucking drinking soda, they're always eating ice cream. It's just all these things. I think ultimately just it's like the whole thing of vitality is, I think, innate to a person, and I think it's 100% inherited. And to
Exactly.
say that it's not genetic is a common thing with the Pete perspective. But ultimately, I think the bioenergetic state of life is what informs the genetic state. It's like there is a bit of structure that forms out of that. I mean, 100% we see it with, like, look at dogs. Like, you're telling me that we can't breed dogs and we can't breed humans to select for certain traits or whatnot. Like you can 100% have selective breeding. Like that's what you
Facts.
probably know BAP on here. Like that's what
Facts.
BAP's book is about. And
Fact. 100%.
I think
100%.
that fills a lot of holes. But
100%. That's why my girl's 5'9",
Yeah.
because I wanted guaranteed tall fucking sons.
Yeah.
You know what
Yeah.
I'm saying? Like, I look at all that shit 100%. Um, so is it fair to say that if you stockpile and load up on a ton of health and winning attributes and you don't spend it and you don't use it, is it fair to say that that is an active form of deterioration?
I think so. I mean, I think anything that's keeping you away from a euphoric state, which I think is ultimately when you're in movement, when you're in flow, is going to degenerate you. I mean, ultimately, like you see anyone who's at the top, anyone who's sustained any sort of wealth, and tries to get out of it. It's like the thing of retiring is expiring, like we talked about earlier. It's absolutely always going to topple over because you need the energy flowing through the system to maintain the structure. That's ultimately the whole picture.
100%. That's why I've always said you descend your way to the throne in life.
Yep.
Motherfuckers don't understand this. Like that you sometimes to succeed and get to the top, you go down. Down is the way up in a lot of cases. And people think that ascension, straight propulsion and ascension to the top is the way to go. And it's like, no, brother, like sometimes the way forward is actually down, not up.
Yep.
Which means that you're actually going in that deteriorized catabolic state and then you rebound from it. And it's just, dude, it's a push-pulley mechanism. Everything is yin and yang, which is why these health obsessed freaks, these health nuts that won't let themselves fucking get any microplastics, that are maxing the fuck on their health. I think those guys are objectively very fucking unhealthy after a certain point.
Completely. And you notice actually is something I found really striking is that all of these health maxers, like not, I don't really know any that are like creative. Like I don't really know any who are like making
Exactly.
anything. They're kind of just like healthing out and not really changing. That to me is just like kind of the primitive life form. And I don't think that was ever the point. And I don't think it ever will be. And it's funny to me because like
It's
there's
ingenious, isn't it?
yeah.
It's ingenious what they've done because they're trying to fool nature. And they're trying to essentially say, look, I don't even have to live. I don't have to put anything at stake. I don't have to take risks in life. If I just get the right molecules and curate the perfect nutritional profile, I can achieve what everyone's trying to achieve. And it's like that's exactly what I'm fucking talking about. That's not how it works. Like
Totally.
there actually does have to be a blood investment in some kind of project or artwork. That's what men are designed to do. Men are designed to create in the physical world. And you're 100% correct. These motherfuckers that are chopping papayas in the Caribbean, barefoot maxing and shit, I don't see them fucking really producing anything
Yeah, no.
or pushing themselves or spending their health and then regenerating. Cuz that's basically my model, right? I'm a healthy guy. I spend my health into the dirt. I deplete everything and then I recharge and I deplete it again. And then I recharge and I deplete it again. It's the whole heal method.
Yeah, and there's always a context, right? You know, because that's I think something that probably people have a hard time understanding is that you can't just fully extend yourself if you don't have any reason to. And I actually think you fill several voids that are like just really missing in modern society today, particularly like I think opposing stall tactics and risk avoidance and diffusion of personal responsibility. Like I think what you and I both ultimately see is that the modern environment is slow and it was made this way artificially on purpose to impair like the generation of more life. And this is the whole bioenergetic picture. Like the most destructive things are the ones that are, just tolerable. They don't get bad enough. And like you need to be left with no option. That's really what I see because that's what happened to me just unconsciously. But like I think like when you have this thing where you find your edge, like it's not something you plan out, it's intuition. Like you just keep moving, and sometimes you need to risk it all to do that. And I think what we both focus on is keeping that spirit alive because again, sometimes it does not get bad enough, but you can kind of self-impose it. And I think that's what you really really shine with is identifying how you can do that and where it's being blocked.
Exactly. It's like as a man in the modern world, the realm that we live in doesn't really offer these sort of gratuitous gauntlets anymore. So it's like, as a man, you have to create your own quagmires and work your way out of them. You know what I mean? And that's what I'm talking about when I say taking on the biggest challenges and going into these labyrinths and navigating them successfully. That ultimately, those experience, that's the beauty of being a man, is like your pitfalls, the mistakes, the damage that you've taken all accumulates and stacks into your overall report card. Like those experiences do not go away, and they're not detrimental. They all sort of are handcrafting that aura. And so it's like, as much exposure to life and as much exposure to everything that life has to offer is the best way to craft an aura. There's no way of gaming it. You can't fucking pretend to have a sturdy handshake. You can't fucking take voice classes to make your voice deeper. You know what I'm saying? It's like, that's why charisma is the holy grail to life. And what people don't understand about charisma fundamentally is exactly what we're talking about. It is the totality of your being. It's the combination, the panoply of every single thing in your life that's ever happened to you, all plays a part in your overall charisma. It's the one thing in life you cannot fake. It's in your vocal tone. It's in the way you walk. It's in your gait. It's in the way you step. It's in the way you move. It's in the way you blink. The charisma is embedded in there. And the only way to develop that charisma is to live a fucking harsh, rough life. It's the only fucking way. There's no way around it. And like I said, you cannot fake it. It's in the inflection points in your voice, in your vocal tone. Everybody knows it when they see it. Everyone knows charisma when they see it because it's visceral. You know what I mean? And so it's like, a lot of these guys are actively working against their own charisma by stockpiling and health maxing and forgetting to go out and live life.
Completely. I had a tweet. I said something, I don't remember exactly. It was like, I really think the only force in you and brute de force in the moniker is the force of nature. It's really forcing life to be natural, where you get this state where everything is effortlessly coming to you. Like, that to me is, I think, really the idea that nothing needs to be a certain way. That is the complete flow. And I think that's where the Eastern, and then the idea of building that flow and complexifying it, is the bioenergetic idea of, like, the spiral upwards ultimately.
100%.
I actually had a question. I was thinking, do you think, or do you see this way of life that you kind of promote going mainstream ever? Do you think that's possible, or is it like even a goal?
Fuck no.
Yeah.
Fuck no. But I'll never change. I'll never ever start to water down my message or dilute anything to get a certain reaction. I mean, look, ultimately, nothing I say is prescription. This is what motherfuckers don't understand, and I do want to reiterate this. My Twitter is an open diary to myself. I tweet to myself, I flesh out my thoughts in just an open forum. If people contribute or whatever or make addendums, fantastic. But I'm not here whatsoever to tell anybody how to fucking live. I'm here to share my experience, strength, and hope and wisdom. And if anybody gets anything out of it, fucking great. But other than that, I am not here to curate any kind of tribe or audience whatsoever.
Yeah, completely. I think that's
And
the
I will
point of it
I
too.
will never, that's why I don't think I'll ever go mainstream, because I'm never going to dilute my message. And I know my message is over the heads of most people because I'm really talking to the 1%. I'm not interested, there's accounts on here that do a great job of speaking to the average man. And those accounts are holistic and they're wholesome, and people need that. Society needs that to function. Those people are the staple, they're the linchpin of society. I respect the fuck out of those accounts. I ain't talking to those motherfuckers. I'm talking to the greats. I'm talking to the people who are striving for greatness and who want to be the outliers. It's the only people I'm interested in talking to. I'm not interested in talking to the average man. And I know the average man listens to these shows because it's entertainment. You know what I mean? It's like Phantom of the Opera, and that's fine. But I'm not, that's why I'll never go mainstream, because I ain't talking to the average motherfucker. Not interested in that.
Yeah, and I remember we kind of talked about that. Like, so much of it I really think is missed, like, because to me this whole energy flow idea is like really what you're getting at or building upon, and I don't think many people can intuit that, and I don't know if they ever will, but like to me, like I personally 100% see what you're building. I see it as a philosophy. I do see you as like a philosopher, and it's like funny to fucking say that. But you know, like these ancient classifications just don't really exist anymore. Because it's funny, because like guys will talk about, oh, the West is falling. Like you notice that like 90% of complaints just come from the sidelines, and I found it interesting. Like you look at any innovator of our time, anyone pushing the envelope, I always see it as someone who just keeps moving and just putting their message out there. And it doesn't necessarily even matter what happens to it, but it ends up most of the time getting reiterated by others eventually. You know, eventually it gets reposted, it gets rehashed. Doesn't necessarily even matter if the creator was credited, just as long as their work gets spread, just as long as it integrates into life, which obviously in the past is only through like writing and public speaking, and now I see this in the form of audio and video, you know, like we're doing fucking right now. Like it's the way of the time, you know. There's so many smart guys on Twitter, but you just look at any writer or anyone on here, it's just like you won't get anywhere without video and audio, and I absolutely think that's why you're so effective, because writing and you know, just kind of this structured view of life, of sort of a scientific understanding. Like you said something to me, you're like, we live in a post fact world, and that kind of stuck with me, because ultimately it's like this idea that the proof is just in life itself. There's no paper that can tell you, there's no data that can tell you what life is, because it's just it life outruns any static interpretation. And like
Exactly.
I absolutely see why you're so effective, is because you're run and gun. Just go right now. Like just right now. Just go. And it's like if you're overflowing with energy, a system just starts to form naturally. You know, you don't really need to think too much about how the message gets out. Like it's just you're not really consciously cultivating anything, or
100%.
like trying to make it perfect. You know, because perfect trying to optimize online, like I keep saying this, it's just it literally gets in the way of innovation. Like it's just so powerful to see the development of your entire way of interacting with the world, because it's just you're bringing it forward yourself, and to me there's so much in that, and I think that's just what's been completely missing like in our time.
Yeah, it's missing. It's a post-fact world, and what I mean by that is that we live in a society now where you can't just tell facts. It's too boring. No one has the attention span. No one gives a fuck about your bullet point list. No one gives a fuck about facts anymore. If you want to share facts, you have to weave them into an interesting story. And there's a lot of accounts on Twitter that I see that I actually like, and I think they could pop off, but they're missing that post fact element because they're just giving you bullet point facts. And everyone's bored to tears with that bullshit. No one gives a fuck about facts anymore. It's extremely fucking boring. Everyone has access to Google. We can all look up and curate and find our own fucking facts and run it through a sieve, right? But the guy who can fucking weave it into a story is the guy who's winning in 2024.
Exactly, because it's like there's always a picture to paint, and when that's not there, you're essentially looking at life in a isolation, and nothing can be looked at in
Yeah,
isolation.
it's
There's
like
this
it's like
holistic system.
it's why I also think if you're an anonymous, like I see these anonymous accounts, I don't have any beef with anonymous accounts at all. I do understand it, but
Me too.
one of the cringiest fucking things is like when anon accounts talk about all the pussy that they get and all the money they make and all the girls. It's like, bro, you don't understand. As an anonymous account, those topics should be completely off limits. I don't know what you look like. I've never heard your voice. No one knows who the fuck you really are, and you're talking about all the women you get. Get the fuck out of here. Like, who are you fooling? You know what I mean? And it's like it's one of these things in life where I want to make this clear. You can never show off who you are through the direct trait itself. For example, you're never gonna prove to anybody that you're intelligent by reciting facts. You could literally learn the fucking Declaration of Independence by heart. You could recite that on stage behind a pulpit. No one's gonna think you're intelligent. You know how you really prove intelligence? You know how you show women you're intelligent? You know how you show the world you're intelligent? Is through wit. It's through being witty. Witty motherfuckers are always gonna have a better presentation of high intelligence. And it's like that with every quality and trait in life. You can never ever do it directly. You always show who you really are through a different means, through a different mode.
Completely. You know, I noticed it's like most things in life, I think maybe even all things in life, you get by proxy. You get by proxy of there's not really a word to put it into perspective, you know, without sounding all like woo woo, but it's legitimately your energetic field is what draws things into life. Like ultimately, I think you can see it at the cellular level where you see these different electrolytes and substances going back and forth between inside and out of the cell. And that I think is what stimulates life. It's this electrical view of the universe. And it's just that to me is the thing where life is just generating and nothing is static. And it always gets back to that decentralized picture versus this, you know, this structured, centralized view.
100%. It's all oblique. Everything is oblique to the actual thing itself. It's for the same reason. It's for the same reason that it's like it's kind of like this too. If you want to prove toughness, you don't really become an MMA fighter. You don't become an MMA fighter. There's a reason why um, gladiators were fucking peasants. They were considered low class dregs and peasants because we all kind of know subconsciously that true toughness and true strength means never having to exert it in the first place.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like a real tough motherfucker, a true tough motherfucker, never gets into a fucking physical scuffle in the first place. Doesn't have to.
I think that that's something interesting, like, because Ray had this idea that I'm still trying to piece together of like the future of our evolution is I think he said it's infantile and it's actually feminine. He said something like that, and it was interesting to me because I think his whole point was like really the consciousness is ultimately the thing that we see evolving, and that's where you see, you know, the bigger brains and whatnot, and ultimately just this higher energy state. And it was funny because I remember on a Spaces a little bit back, you were I forget what you said. Or no, you were like you think God is a female, and a lot of people were up in arms about that. But if I understood correctly, it seems like what you were trying to say was just that God is ultimately a giving force, and there's always masculine and feminine forces in nature, and that kind of stimulates things. Like, am I getting that correct? Or
100%. That's exactly what I was saying.
yeah,
They went right over the midwit fucking dome piece. I'm not surprised.
yeah.
I'm not
No, you know
surprised.
what?
I'm not surprised whatsoever.
Yeah.
It was an egregious metaphor, but it drove the fucking point home.
Yeah. I think like I think about William Blake so much because I see so many parallels with that. Like I think I said like Blake was a Christian, but he viewed imagination as God, and he sort of like flew in the face of the Christian practices. So I wanted to talk about like listening to your nature. You said something along the lines of it doesn't matter if Christ wants if Christ himself doesn't want you to carry out the mission, you do it anyway because you have an obligation. And I think that was a misnomer. I think you actually meant like to me, I think God wants what you want truly deep down in your own spirit. And that's what I think Blake saw. And you had a quote, it was like primal desires are virtuous, not sinful. Denial of the beast within is pretend. Pretend is sin. And I think that's what encapsulates it. Since I think like our intuition and nature is the guide. To me, that's the extension of God into man.
Exactly. It's kind of like what I just said the other day about these young cats on Twitter are seriously trying on masculinity as a costume. It's like a wardrobe for them. They're they're trying on these different fucking garments and seeing what fucking works. But it's like I just fucking said, if you have a true body of work and you're objectively the guy, all you need to do is put out your artwork and you're going to express all of those same high status qualities and attributes just through the expression of your work itself. And that's the
Yeah,
better way. That's the better way to do it. It's like
exactly.
a motherfucker can hear you talk for 2 hours on a show, and they're gonna know if you're intelligent. They're gonna know if you get women. They're gonna know if you're rich. They're gonna be able to easily, viscerally fucking apprehend a better picture of who you really are. You never have to say it directly. You don't have to get on here and fucking tell everyone that you fucking get women. Like, just start talking and dropping work, and people will know instantaneously if you're the guy or not.
Yep.
But that's why these motherfuckers won't do a spaces. That's why these motherfuckers don't do voice notes. That's why they don't do videos, because they're hiding.
Completely. Yeah.
They know you can't fake this shit up here on the stage.
That brings me into something else. I like, what do you think about the importance of self-expression in early youth, particularly either like physical endeavors like athletics or just the pursuit of natural interest in general? Like, how important do you think early development plays for, like, the older, or I mean the how your life pans out?
I think it's extremely important. I think it starts at the local level. I think I think fame in general is largely unnatural. And I think that as a youngster, you need to find an arena where you can compete in, where you are notably better than everybody else. Because that's the fastest way to draw in that kind of gravitational pull where opportunities open up to you. I used the example before, when I was in my 20s, any gym that I walked into, I was the strongest guy there, pound for pound, by far. So I'd walk into a commercial gym and I'm snatching 300 pounds with metal plates in a fucking commercial gym. No one's ever seen anybody lift that kind of weight at my size. And you bet your ass it's a fucking spectacle. So then you just get known. You understand? You're sort of like, you're creating a fucking crater. You're creating a footprint. You're leaving your fingerprints all over the suite. And so when you leave those environments, you're leaving impressions on people. So at the local level, like local within your own community, I do think guys need to find a forum where they can find some sort of arena of importance where you're just noticeably and notably better than everybody else. And I do find that to be a very powerful springboard in life in general. The opportunities that opened to me when I was younger, just from being super fucking athletic and strong, were outrageous. The kind of conversations that would open, motherfuckers would fucking talk to me. I'd fucking make quick friends. I'd fucking find my way into fucking high up circles just from being a fucking athlete was insane. And then deal flow would happen, opportunities, jobs would be given to me, odd fucking deals, shit like that. And you just fucking, you capture it and seize the momentum and you fucking ride the wave.
Yeah, completely. I like,
So
I
I
see
think I
that
think
as one of the biggest.
competition is super fucking important when you're younger.
Yeah,
I
totally.
mean, I
Because I
mean,
see that as one of the biggest ones.
yeah, 100%. It's like at your local level, if you walk out in public and you walk into a restaurant and no one even knows who you are, you're fucking up in life big time. Because in my local community, when I walk out in public, I'm like the mayor. I got people shaking my hands on every street corner. Everyone knows who I am in my area. If I walk into a coffee shop, if I walk into a restaurant, I got 5 or 10 people that are greeting me right away. And if you don't think that that creates a fucking upward spiral of momentum and fucking creativity and inspiration, you're insane. It's the best way to go about life. You got to get out there. You got to get active. You got to make your face known in your local community. People have to know who the fuck you are.
Yeah, I think it was Customato, like Mike Tyson's trainer, said something along the lines of competence is what builds the confidence. Like, because I really see guys getting at it from like the backwards lens, thinking that you need to be confident to fucking get somewhere. I couldn't think that that's further from the reality. Like, again, it goes back to that run and gun. You just kind of go with what you have right now, and that's what ends up getting you into the places that you've been striving for the whole time, I think.
Dude, there's no more powerful notion than just working with what you got in front of you. It's so fucking powerful. If you're a fat piece of shit and you've let yourself get completely out of shape and you hate yourself and you hate your life, you still have a starting point right now. You're not going back. You're never going to get it back. You can't go back to yesterday. You can't undo all the damage, but you do have cards and you do have a hand that you can play right now. You can take that fucking first step any fucking time you want. You have something to work with all the time. And that's the real alchemical process. That's the real
Yep.
magic, by the way.
How important, like, do you find your environment to your process? Like, because it seems like you're, for the most part, on the West Coast and like warm, sunny places. Do you find that important?
I do. I think environment's a little bit overrated. I'm the same motherfucker no matter what environment I'm in. I'm the same guy. Things change. People change. Same birds, different feathers. But I do think the environment thing is definitely a little bit overrated. I mean, to a degree. I've definitely curated my life to stay away from normies and riffraff and fucking scum as much as I can, and I think that's been a huge superpower. You know what I'm saying? Like I don't put myself in environments where I'm ever gonna get into a fucking bar fight. Like I don't hang around stupidity. I hang around upper class people, and I think that's 100% been a huge competitive advantage. Even when I was broke and I lived in shitty areas, I would just fucking drive the extra fucking 10 minutes and go to a nice spot. And I think that's definitely so from an environmental perspective on that, I think that's huge. But as far as like where I am, where I'm living, the container that I'm living in, I don't give a fuck if I'm sleeping on the castle steps or a futon bed. I'm
Yeah.
still me. I'm still me. You know what I'm saying? And I think homeless people is a lot of false advertising in a way, in the sense that I think people think if they lose everything pursuing their dreams, that you become some schizoed out fucking paranoid freak who's fucking mumbling to themselves, behind a fucking dumpster. That's not how it works as a man. As a man, you're still you. I'm always still me, no matter what happens. It just doesn't go anywhere. So it's like once you understand that, you can actually put up a lot more shots and take more risks and really go for it in life.
Yeah. I think like Miyamoto Musashi, if you know about him, like the Book of Five Rings really is like the idea of just this warrior spirit that you can work with any tool, and like that is the place to be, because like I think this idea that you have of just using anything and everything at your disposal, just maximizing the use of your environment no matter where you are, really just expending everything to get more back. I absolutely see this in the same lens that I see metabolism. Like it's just running through things and just understanding that
Exactly.
no tool is meant to be kept forever.
Exactly. It's like you might not have any money, but you do have an iPhone. It's like that's something huge to work with right there. That's a transmutable thing, and it's like that's your magic carpet. Sometimes you just got to start there. But it's like you always have something huge to work with in front of you. You just got to be able to mold the clay. You got to be a creator. You got to maximize your environment and maximize the hand that you currently have, because you ain't getting yesterday back. And everybody knows this, but everyone's just wishing to get yesterday back. And it ain't coming. I hate to fucking spoil the party, but yesterday ain't coming back. All you can do is take the first step today.
It's destroy the past. Yeah, it's funny. It's like the iPhone is the modern sword. Like I know you're kind of like um really work on your phone mainly is you've said, but like to me it's like so parallel to the warrior of like just kind of working with his tool. And to me it's like just an interesting thing. Like I also was thinking like I know you say you don't read much, but you clearly are well versed in a lot of high level ideas and understand language. So, like, do you think it's important for a guy to ever study or educate themselves early on, or do you think it just comes from experience in the arena?
I do. I think reading is important. I've been gifted in many ways. Like to be very, very frank with you, I genuinely don't think I've ever finished a book cover to cover. Maybe the only one I've ever finished is The Road by Cormac McCarthy. That was a fucking good book. And it was a short read. So I think I went cover to cover on that. But I don't think I've ever read a book fully cover to cover. I skim. I said this on the last spaces. I've always assumed if I'm reading a paper, or if I'm reading an academic paper, if I'm reading a journal, if I'm reading any kind of pamphlet or any kind of literature, I go through it one time. And if I reach a resistance point where I don't have comprehension or I don't really understand what I read, I refuse to go back. Talking about burning the past, this is on a micro level. I refuse to go back and reread it again, because I just assume I trust the systems, I trust my unconscious mind that if I hit that resistance point, number one, I probably wasn't ready to absorb that information at this particular time. Or number two, it was just useless information, and my fucking unconscious mind is so genius that it knows that I don't that's irrelevant. So I keep moving, and the things that I read that I instantaneously comprehend, I'm like, okay, that was a fucking blurb of information that my unconscious mind needs to synthesize and digest. I don't go back. I don't go back. I don't go back and reword. I don't go back to a problem and try to crack it. I keep moving forward. And
Yeah.
I've always been that way. And honestly, I think that's how you resurrect true talent.
That's interesting because I had this discussion with a few guys because I have just become so anti-discipline, and just intuition is discipline to me, because I think that's what really gets you the energy to move forward on something. Discipline just happens. Like that's my whole thesis of discipline, and cultivating it is really just getting in the way. But like there 100% is something to like a consistent iteration on something and kind of cracking away at something and putting the reps in and just honing yourself in like a certain lift, or honing yourself in a certain process, or rereading something until you can crystallize the knowledge. And I was trying to put that together because like someone like Ray Pete, who took this like intuitive view of life, I think 100% when he has oriented himself towards furthering reality, you can kind of understand what can be, worked with and repeated and routinized. Because that to me, like I had a tweet like, consistent iteration is dopaminergic, like pretty much supporting drive and energy, and then repetitive routine is really that's like the serotonergic, just mindless state. And that was something interesting to me because I tend to go back on certain things just to really crystallize my knowledge, and I think it's kind of necessary for me too, just talking about like the higher level ideas. So I don't know,
Yeah,
that's
to
something
polish it.
interesting.
Yeah, to polish it is I understand that completely.
Yeah.
But I do think it's an important concept. I've never heard anybody really discuss it, but this idea of remembering bits and pieces of things and going through life, and there's memories that you hold on to, and they're sort of confusing. They're kind of flustering because you're just like, why did I remember that one fragment of a situation? And it's because your body genuinely will hold on to only important things. Your mind does not want to store information that's not of vital use to it. And so, running with that theory, if I remember bits and pieces of a subject or a topic, I always assume whatever remnants I'm capturing is because I was basically sucking the marrow from the bone, and I was getting down to like the crux of what I needed to know in that particular instance. And
Yeah,
then and then what's interesting about that is a lot of those fragmented memories will definitely make themselves into like the mosaic and the tapestry of a larger thing in the future. But you got to keep living to kind of complete the jigsaw puzzle. You know,
totally.
it's a jigsaw puzzle. Like a lot of these memories are totally fragmented, but you'll live or you'll carry out a different experience, and then you'll be like, oh fuck, that was the border piece that I was missing on the end of that puzzle. Now it makes sense. And so it's like you got to keep living to reach the epiphanies and the revelations, or they never come. And that's why people get confusion. And I think that's why people spin their wheels in the mud trying to go back and constantly fucking polish and go back to material and literature that's not readily accessible. Like I know this is true because even when I watch movies, which is a different medium, I'll have a completely different interpretation and understanding of concepts in a movie 5 years later in retrospect. It's like I watched an entirely fucking different movie because I have an entirely different plethora of experiences that I'm using to tap into that. And I think reading is one of those interesting things where, especially if you're reading high literature and you're reading stuff that's like that's advanced and a little bit more technical and a little bit over your head, especially like in the terminology and the vocabulary and the lexicon's a little difficult for you. It's one of those things where reading, you have to have a broad amount of life experience when you go into some of these reading journeys, because you can pull a lot more from it drawing from your experience. That's what's interesting about reading. It's a companionship between you and the author. And so the more personal experience you have to draw from, the more you can glean from the literature itself. It's like you can go read Moby Dick right now. And Moby Dick is one of those books that's so fucking lofty and eggheaded that you actually need a tremendous amount of fucking life experience just to understand what the fuck is going on in the first 30 pages. And most people are eliminated in the first 30 pages of these types of books because they just simply they're not ready. You understand what I'm saying?
Yeah, no, completely. I think there's like a sort of assimilation that happens unconsciously, and that's to me like this idea, like you're saying this eclectic understanding. That's kind of what puts it together. Like these conscious or unconscious processes are really the big synthesizer. Like that's why bro, people make this joke of like you don't need to read Nietzsche, you can just live and you can just intuit Nietzsche and you don't need to read a single one of his books. And it's 100% true. Like you can just get through like the brief idea and you're good. You're good. You can just keep living. Like that's what you have. You're Nietzsche now. Like it's so funny to me because like yeah, a lot of the reading and stuff like that it kind of gets in the way sometimes. That's I think this like post fact world thing that you're
100,
talking about.
100%. The most interesting part about my Twitter journey, hands down, has been the DMs that I get from academics that will link me a passage from a book, and they'll be like, dude, they'll be like, do you know who this philosopher is? Or like, there's so many parallels. And every time I'm like, they probably think I'm capping. They probably think I've read this guy. I
Yeah,
have no
yeah.
idea who the fuck you're talking about. I just lived life and I arrived at the same conclusion as this guy.
Yeah,
It happens to me
exactly.
all the time. Like I accidentally stumble upon these insights that are so fucking parallel to all the greats. And it's just through living.
Yeah, bro. Because I know we talked about that other few things too, but it's like I think it's so
This guy will be
funny.
like, oh, you read fucking Schopenhauer. And I'm like, brother, I actually didn't. I have no idea
Yeah,
what
yeah.
the fuck you're talking about.
It's so funny to me because just what a philosopher gets at is always what's intuition to them. The philosopher always just gets at the intuition, and like that's why you see I think creativity is ultimately like this thing where a lot of the great creatives share many of the same practices because it's just it comes out naturally, and that's to me why this idea of order in reality is kind of a big thing of just objectivity. There's objectivity in all things, and you can get
100%.
at that just through a different process
Well,
in
and
each life circumstance.
but and so like most of these concepts are very elusive to you if you just read. And that, I guess that's my point, is there's a certain amount of life experience. Dude, I'm not kidding. There's been reading concepts that have been very difficult for me to tackle in the past. There might have been a line that was written in a way where I'm just like, I don't really understand what this guy's fucking saying. And then I'll go live 5 years and I'll come across that same blurb 5 years later, and now it's a breeze. It fucking clicks instantaneously. I'm like, I completely understand what that fucking passage meant.
Yep.
You know what I mean? So it's like that whole, it's just fucking interesting how it all fucking ties into everything I've always been saying. Everything constellates from that whole concept of burning the past and letting it die. Because everything that needs to be elucidated is gonna come your way when you're ready.
Completely. It metabolizes itself. That's really what I see.
Some powerful fucking shit, dude. It's a powerful way to
Yeah,
live. It's like when you're stumbling at a problem that you just can't crack or tackle, it's like, buddy, you need to go inject yourself and immerse yourself in the world, get some more fucking stripes on your belt, and then come back to it. And I promise you, it's gonna be a lot fucking easier.
absolutely. Yeah,
It's like you know what I'm saying? People get to a wall in life and they think that they have to find a bulldozer or a tool that's going to bore through the wall. And it's like, that's not how it works. Sometimes you actually got to go back a couple steps into the mud where there's clarity. There's clarity in the dirt. And once you get that clarity, you go back to the wall and you understand that all you had to do was high step it.
hmm
You never actually had to break through it.
hmm yeah, yeah, bro. Honestly, let's see. I had one more thing I was thinking about. So if money isn't really an endpoint, which I kind of think we talked about, how it's more just a tool or just like a product of energy. What do you think the main point of having money in today's time is?
I think,
Can people win without it?
no, so I just look at money as sort of like the encrusted jewel in the skull. It's like you're just putting a ruby or a fucking topaz or a sapphire in the skull. It's like, it's not, money is a lot less utilitarian than people think. It's not as sexy as you fucking, like, people think it's incredible to be just flowing in fucking riches like Scrooge McDuck. It's honestly not how it fucking works. It doesn't change that much. Food still tastes the same no matter how rich you are. Music still fucking sounds just as good whether you're fucking sleeping under a fucking dumpster or in a baronial castle in fucking Spain. It's the same fucking thing. And so it's like there's only a couple. Sex is the same, whether you're rich or not. Like all these main biological functions and processes that bring us pleasure, they're the fucking same. They're not enhanced. And I think that's a huge myth. A lot of people have this myth in their head that if they get a ton of money, somehow every sensation in life is totally heightened. Food is gonna just magically fucking taste 100 times better. Sex is gonna feel better. Music somehow is the fucking sonic blast from the music somehow is gonna like ring in your ears differently. It's not the fucking case whatsoever. So what I look at money as a man, I look at it as the last step. I don't think money's the first step. Everyone says get rich first, then figure everything else later. Bullshit. It's the opposite. As a man, you want to get the life experience, understand social dynamics, become a fucking social wizard, lean into your talent. Money is the capstone. It's the final piece of the equation. And once you are the type of man you want to be, then you can put the dressing on top of it, which is money. And having a lot of money, the true function of it, believe it or not, is just kind of that last little 1% optimization of that aura. Yes, it does give you some more fucking swagger and pep in your step when you have cake in the bank. No doubt about it. You're gonna move a little bit differently. There's definitely something it does to your aura. You're gonna fucking have some more confidence knowing that you got millions of dollars for sure. But people don't understand that's a micro optimization. Being rich is a micro optimization. It doesn't fucking add nearly as much to the stack as you fucking think. It's the polish. It's the polish. It's the final step. Go out there, become the kind of man you want to be, and then figure out how to put money on top of it. It ain't the other way
Yeah.
around because we all know the fucking meme and the archetype very well of the rich nerd. The guy who got rich first and now has a very clumsy way of dealing with life and has zero fucking clue how to manage it.
I'm interested in what because you
And
had to say.
ironically, what I just said is $1 million advice. No pun intended.
Yeah. No, bro, because that made me think because I remember you said something about you need to win by the rules of society. You need to soar to the heights of that. Then you can denounce everything. So to me, that's like kind of like the like Jack Dorsey like type making money and then becoming all like anti-materialist. And to me, I don't really even think that's a good philosophy to take. But where's your thought with that?
So, bro, that's another secret, and I'll fucking lay it out here right now, and I shouldn't because it's part of the fucking secret game. But here's the deal, and I'll share this with you guys. It's one of the biggest secrets of life is you can only criticize something when you are it yourself. In other words, because I'm a strong athletic motherfucker, I can talk shit about the gym and looks maxing all fucking day long. Cause I already got it. I'm already the guy. So I can fucking talk shit about this shit and it's not gonna come off. But if you're a fat motherfucker who's out of shape and you're porky and you've never had any kind of athleticism or strength, good luck marketing anti-gym takes. Good luck, buddy. Cause that shit's going nowhere. And I see a lot of people doing that on Twitter. I see a lot of people who are not the thing itself. You can only criticize the thing itself if you are the thing. You know what I mean? It kind of goes back to that concept of you got to, if you want to change the world, you got to become what you hate. A lot of people don't understand that, but like if you actually want to dismantle a philosophy or crumble a system, you have to become the thing you hate first, and then you can destroy it.
Completely. Yeah, I actually was trying to put something together with this.
But
Because I think like
I see out of shape. I see out of shape fucking dough bread motherfuckers talking shit about fitness and looks maxing. And I'm like, brother, you don't have a fucking platform or a pulpit to be talking like that.
yeah.
Like, go fucking become a national champion. Go get elite numbers in your field, and then we can have a conversation.
Yeah, no, exactly. Like I see like the critiques of society, like I think where the psychedelic 70s psychedelic movement went wrong, like the hippies, is that they said no, we don't want any of this in society. And to me, like yeah, of course, obviously people know they obviously have valid critiques of like the modern world. But the thing is they didn't take the process of winning in the modern world. Like that's I think what you're getting.
Exactly. That's what I'm getting at. You got to win first before you can start start dunking on shit.
Yeah. If you don't have a alternative, there's no reason to even say anything, you know?
It's 100% true.
Yeah. I don't know if you
That's
got
a
anything
that's a
else, but
that's a wicked secret of the universe. Yeah, bro. I think we'll close here. I enjoyed the
yeah, I think it's
conversation.
good. Yeah, bro,
Yeah,
that was
bro.
great.
All right, brother. Peace.
Yeah, see ya.